Alright, my mid-season power rankings for the 2023 AFL season. Starting off in 18th, I think it is pretty obvious it's the West Coast Eagles. They've been by far the worst side this season. I mean, how many 100-point losses have they had? It's been absolutely ridiculous. Their last win was in round 2 against GWS. They have lost their last... something like 9-10 games. They've lost bloody 11 out of their last 12. Probably more going back to last season, but yeah, God. West Coast have had an ugly season, to say the least, and they've been put in sort of that Fitzroy bracket almost of how bad they actually are. I mean, obviously injuries are decimating their list, and you know, a lot of young players are having to be chucked into the deep end, but I still think it's no excuse for how bad a team physically can be. Like, they are so poor. There's no effort, there's no desire, there's no game plan, even from these young players. There's just an unwillingness to win. I'm going to give you a stat right here. West Coast's second lowest loss of the season was against Port Adelaide, where they only lost by 40 points. That was their second lowest loss. I tell you what, the amount of times they've been banged by over 10 goals and over 100 points, they are not moving off the bottom of the table or off the bottom of the power rankings for the season. Coming into 17th, I am going to have to put North Melbourne. They are currently sat with a record of 2-9. They are one win off Hawthorn in 16th place on the AFL ladder, and they've been unlucky the past 2 weeks. Not necessarily unlucky last week against Collingwood. It was an expected result, but I thought in that second half they put up a really good fight and showed some dare, some spark, and a bit of an insight into the future of that young North Melbourne core, which they've built so well. You know, the Harry Sheezels, the George Wardlaws, even the Will Phillips, who I'm not sure if he actually played in that game, but I think the young core at North Melbourne is probably the best out of the bottom 4. You could argue that and Hawthorn. I think North Melbourne is set up for a really good future, but obviously that won't be for a while. And, you know, with Brett Ragan at the wheel at the moment, it'll be interesting to see when or whether Clarko does get back. Yeah, it's a really interesting time for North, but obviously last week an expected loss to Collingwood, but they didn't go down, or, you know, they went down fighting, and then the week before they were, you could almost say, robbed against Sydney, the interchange breach. I'm still not fully decided on that. I thought we'd just move past it. I've tried to read the rules, and I can't decide on my mind up about it. Let me know now in the comments. Was that were North Melbourne robbed against Sydney those couple of weeks ago? Coming into 16th on the power rankings, I am going to have to put Hawthorn. But I tell you what, it was very close with one other team. But yeah, I am going to have to put Hawthorn. And it's unfortunate. Hawthorn have just come off 2 straight wins. You know, the win against West Coast was impressive because it actually was good football. Like, I know it's against West Coast, but it's still a hard... You know, it's a hard feat to hold a team to 26 points and win by 116 and score 22 goals team yourself, 142. It's a really good effort, and Hawthorn, like North Melbourne, they've got a really good young core for the future, and they've got something to be excited about. Unlike, you know, fans of like Carlton and West Coast and stuff like that. So yeah, I think North Melbourne and Hawthorn are both moving in the right direction. Hawthorn have picked up 2 straight wins because reward for effort. They now only sit 2 points off Richmond on the table, and they sit 4 points off Greater Western Sydney. Yeah, Hawthorn, they won't climb their way out the bottom 4, but, you know, at least there's a spark there. You know, some of the young players such as Josh Ward, Cam McKenzie, even the additions of Carl Amon in the off-season, I think they've done really well. Sam Mitchell and the staff patching up all the losses they had in the off-season, and really just getting stuck into it. You know, really just getting that list flip over started sooner rather than later. And yeah, Hawthorn heading in the right direction. 2 straight wins, bit of reward for effort. Could they move up into 15th in the power rankings in a few weeks' time? Who knows? Now, in 15th in the power rankings, they were almost 16th, but they've stuck their way into 15th. In the bottom 4 of the power rankings, it's Carlton. And they can't be any higher or any lower. I think it's a perfect placement for Carlton. They have been absolutely abysmal. Even if, you know, some results don't... Even, like, you know, they've won a few games this season. They've won 4 games this season, but gee, those 4 wins don't show how bad they've been this season. They're definitely a bottom 4 side this year. I think they deserve to finish bottom 4. I think a team like GWS or even Richmond deserve to be out the bottom 4. I just do think they're a much better side than Carlton, because with Carlton, they just show no effort. I mean, look, they've lost 5 straight now, and at the time of recording this video a few hours ago, they just lost to Melbourne by 17 points, and it was only 17 points to Melbourne, but Melbourne didn't play well. Carlton were held to the lowest score in the Michael Voss era, and they just bombed along inside 50 time after time. Week before, lost to Sydney by 26, Collingwood by 28, Bulldogs by 20, Brisbane by 26. It's just the way they play. That's the thing. It is just completely the way they play. They got smashed in gather-round, smashed against St Kilda. Yeah, the only teams they've beaten this season were GWS, North Melbourne, West Coast, and they scalped that game against Geelong early this season. But man, Carlton have some serious thinking to do. The board has repeatedly backed Michael Voss, which I think is the right thing to do. But yeah, wow, the fans are turning on Voss now. Giving me some Brendan Bolt and David Teague vibes, I can't lie, but yeah, Carlton are funnily bad, and you know, my two least favourite sides, both being in the bottom four in Carlton and West Coast, it's very, very funny to see. I must say. Coming to 14th on the power rankings, just outside the bottom four. This could be a little controversial. I wasn't actually sure which way I was going to go with this one, but I have gone Richmond in 14th, just below GWS, who sit in 13th. Richmond are a very, very interesting side this year. They were expected to make that top four tilt, that top four push, that premiership push even, and they really just haven't found, they really just haven't hit their straps this year. They've lost their previous two, both in very respectable manner, to a good Essendon side by 1 and a good Port Adelaide side by 10. Before that, they beat Geelong and West Coast, but I think Richmond's game style is, you know, obviously Damien Hardwick left. You could sense a bit of burnout from the players reflecting off Damien Hardwick in his final weeks, and I think it was the right time for Hardwick to leave, and let's see where McCloskey can take them for the rest of this season, because they won't make finals. It's a bit of a write-off, and it's now just all about building for the future, when, you know, for the past few years, they've been building for the now. So it's going to be a really interesting list turnover to see what Richmond will do with that list that they've been building for the present, whether that's moving guys like Jack Rewalls on and moving some of the older backmen. You know, maybe a bit of a veteran overhaul, you know, keep some there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because it's also really, you know, Richmond need to be careful how they handle people who have won a premiership, because people who have won a premiership for your club are different royalty when it comes to, you know, trades and contract extensions and delistings and stuff like that. But yeah, Richmond, they'll be fine this season. I think they'll be a mid-table side. They won't be bottom four. Yeah, they've been bad in patches this season, but it was some Hardwick burnout that really caught them off guard. And the last 4 weeks even, they won 3 and 4 weeks ago, and then their last 2 games have been really, really respectable losses. So yeah, Richmond, they'll build. Coming into 13th, as I've already said, it is the GWS Giants. GWS are a surprise package. They were my wooden spoon tip at the start of the year, and wow, they've impressed me. Yeah, GWS have really, really impressed me with the way they've been playing. Adam Kingsley has instilled the Orange Tsunami style of football into the side. They just came off a win against Geelong down at the Calgary, and while Geelong aren't great, a 7-point win against Geelong in Geelong. They've now beaten Geelong at Kardinia Park 3 straight times. It's the longest streak in AFL history of a team beating Geelong down there. Yeah, really, really impressive win. And then the few weeks before, look, they're all just respectable results, really. Probably except for the Collingwood game. They went down by 65 there. I felt I could probably pull that back a little bit more. You know, the St Kilda lost by 12. Even though St Kilda weren't at their best, you know, they're still in contention, probably just for finals now. I think top four's probably out the window. And then the loss to the Bulldogs at Manuka Oval was just to a much better team. The Bulldogs have really overexceeded this year. And the week before that one, they won the Battle of the Bridge. So GWS are having an overexceeding season when most people predicted them to be the bottom 2 with Hawthorn. You know, Hawthorn are showing promise. GWS are exceeding by a long way. I thought just with that new coach and that whole new vibe around Great Western Sydney, it would change a little bit. But no, they've done really, really well under Adam Kingsley, and I like him. I think Kingsley's made GWS quite a likeable side, because I feel like under Leon Cameron in the past few years, I didn't really like GWS a whole lot. I think Kingsley's really instilled a culture that, you know, makes a lot of teams or a lot of fans like Great Western Sydney. They've got a very good future, and they're in some pretty good form at the moment with some of their results. Coming into 12th on the power rankings, they sit 11th on the AFL table, 12th in the power rankings. I've gone with the Sydney Swans. The Swans are a mixed bag. I think a lot of people predict their downfall after last year's grand final grubbing. But yeah, I don't think the downfall was this heavily anticipated. They've slowly started to pick up a bit of form. They've won 2 straight games, and they're now only 4 points out the top 8, so that's still within touching distance. Their season is still alive, but yeah, it's just some of the way they've been playing their football, even in some of the wins and most of the losses, they've just been really, really dreadful. A bit like Carlton, there's been no game plan, no method, just bombing the ball long into the 50, and it's just been a bit of carefree football from all the Sydney players, and guys like, you know, Chav Warner and Isaac Heaney, who were stepping up last year, Tom Papley, just haven't really been stepping up a whole lot this year. I know Papley kicked 6 against Richmond in Gather Round, but apart from that, I don't really remember a memorable Tom Papley performance before these last 2 wins. So yeah, you know, obviously that North win was very, very lucky, and they just beat a really average Carlton side. They're on the bye at the moment, and maybe this could be the reset, because they're very, very lucky to only be 4 points outside the top 8. Coming into 11th, I think Gold Coast deserve to be above Sydney. I think they've been the better side this year overall. I've really rated the Suns this year, but it's just annoying, because it's the same old story of just win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And you just wonder, when in this bloody 14-year or whatever period of the Gold Coast Suns, will they find a bigger continuity with their football and take them into finals? Because they're only 4 points out of finals. Like, it's not without out of reaching distance, but making the top 8 is so competitive this year, because you've still got teams like Sydney, Geelong and Fremantle outside the top 8 who all played finals last year and who are all knocking on the door. And then you've got these clubs who have just joined the battle, such as St Kilda, Adelaide and Essendon. So, and Port Adelaide. Like, there are so many new top 8 spots up for grabs. I mean, who knows? Gold Coast could finish in the top 8, but it's just too competitive. We need to see some continuity from them. You know, they just come up with a few really bad losses after a few really good wins. It's just frustrating sometimes. Like, that Q clash, I thought they really could have put up a better fight, but they just let, you know, Lachie Neale and Will Ashcroft run away with it in the end. But I think some of their wins have been really impressive. You know, I think the win against the Bulldogs was really gutsy. I don't think the Bulldogs were particularly good, but in those dewy conditions, it definitely suited Gold Coast a whole lot more. You know, playing in the Gold Coast every second week, and then that West Coast win's a given, and being Richmond at Marvel looked very, very comfortable, and Richmond weren't great, but it's still a very nice win to pick up, and they took it right up to Melbourne, who definitely weren't anywhere near their best, but, you know, for a building side like them, it's really, really promising, having those sorts of losses and having those sorts of wins. So it's just whether Stuart Dew and the players can start turning it into continuity of wins and getting results consistently, because it's a results business. Into 10th on the power rankings, I've got the Geelong Cats, the reigning premiers. Wow, this is surprising. They are just a slump of their former selves, and you can make all these injury excuses, but they've still got Tom Stewart, Sam Koning, Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron, Mark Blitzarth. They've still got a large portion, a majority of their best 22 in their 22. And it's just a bit of carefree for some of these players. Like, Tom Stewart's had a few unbelievable games this year, and he's had a few just whatever, I'll let the ball in the goals. It's just some of these players that just something up and down, and you know, they're trying to implement the newer players, which I get, and I agree with Geelong finally trying to do. Like, I think that the Irish bloke Oisin Mullen last week, I thought he looked so comfortable at the level. People calling him the Nick Dacos of Gaelic football, and he looked like it. I tell you what, he looks like such a good ball user, such a hunger for the ball coming off halfback. I really, really like the look of Mullen. But Geelong, you know, they're bloodying the youth this year. They've got so many injuries. They've just come off 3 straight losses against the Tigers, the Dockers, and the Giants. They've really got to find some form if they want to play finals footy. And they're lucky to be within touch. When was the last time they missed finals? 2015 or something like that. So, yeah, it'd be a big, big loss for the club if Geelong missed finals this year coming off the flag. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Coming in at 9th for the power rankings, I feel bad leaving them out of the top 8 of the power rankings, to be honest, but I am going to go with Essendon. And yeah, it's unfortunate I'm leaving Essendon out the top 8 of the power rankings, because I think they can definitely be a top 8 side this year, like a lot of the teams battling around this area, but I just think there are just some continuity of results that's lacking. You know, they had a patch at the start of the season where they won a patch in the middle where they just lost a bunch, and then a patch again where they've just won 2 straight. They're consistent in blocks though, and they need to get consistent in a block of wins. Look, I think the method and the football Essendon are playing under Brad Scott is so much better. It's a much improved style of the past few years. They've definitely got an identity. I think their key players are turning up, and even in the absences of guys like Darcy Parish and Will Setterfield, you've got guys like Ben Hobbs and Jake Stringer and Jack Caldwell taking up those midfield duties alongside Zach Merritt. And I think the versatility of so many of those young guys in the Bombers list profile make them such an exciting team and such a unique team. And they're solidified really, really well for the future. Can they win a final though? That's the real question. Coming in 8th, I've got the Adelaide Crows. I'm putting the Crows in 8th due to as you can tell, I haven't even mentioned the Dockers yet. So I have got the Dockers in a decently high position. That is due to respect of 4 straight wins. It's power rankings. If you have 4 straight wins against quality opposition, we played Hawthorn, then for majority quality opposition, you've got to be put at a decently high ranking in a power ranking. Anyway, back onto Adelaide. I love Adelaide, to be honest. The last 2 years, they've been a smoky call to potentially make the top 8 for me, and I just love their young list profile. Luke Pedler, Joshua Shelley, Darcy Fogarty, Jake Saligo. There are just so many of these players that I just love watching play, and they've all just got such a hunger to win, and Adelaide are bloody exciting. Matthew Nicks, when people were calling him for be sacked, when they won that wooden spoon a few years ago, and even after that. He's built this list from the ground up, and I think Matthew Nicks is an absolute brilliant coach, and he deserves so much credit for where they are this season. Again, they had a few, they lost to Collingwood by 1 point, they lost to Geelong down the category, but then they went scalp St Kilda by 52. They beat Brisbane at home by 17, and they've really only had one bad performance in the last 6 weeks, and that was to the Western Bulldogs up in Ballarat. So yeah, they've got some real consistency in terms of performances. It's just whether they can now turn these into consistent wins, as is the case for a lot of teams. And a young building team like this, they'll learn that along the way. In 7th of the power rankings, I still haven't mentioned Freo. It's St Kilda. There might be a bit of bias built into this, but if it's a power rankings and you've won 4 straight, I've got to put you at a decently high ranking. St Kilda in 7th. I've got to put St Kilda in 7th as a respect to how they started the season and how they are still a contender, and they're not completely out of form. They are out of favour in terms of delivering good performances, but form-wise, results-wise, they're not completely out of it. They just came off a loss to Hawthorn, which is obviously abysmal, a very close win against Greater Western Sydney, and then the loss to Adelaide, the horrific win against North Melbourne, the unlucky loss to Port Adelaide, you could say, but yeah, wow, there's just some questions over Ross Lyon's side at the moment. It's not Ross Lyon, because I think Ross Lyon's a fantastic coach, and I think he was the right appointment for St Kilda. I think St Kilda are going to have a very similar year to the 2012 Dockers under Ross Lyon. Maybe just scrape into the top 8, maybe pinch a final. But even then, if they just finish outside the top 8, it won't be a fail for St Kilda this year. They've got such a long way to go. The draftee Matthias Filippo and the youngster Anthony Caminiti, and I think the young guns are so well put for St Kilda, and they've got a really, really bright future ahead. It's just whether, in terms of the right now, they can try and solidify themselves a top 8 spot, because they're looking a bit shaky at the moment with so many teams knocking on the door. In 6th, it's the Dockers, and bully me all you want for the bias. But we've won 4 straight games, and we're doing it against quality opposition. We started that run with a win against Hawthorn, which really just gave us the momentum. I think it all started in our game against Brisbane at the Gabba, where we went down by 48, and it wasn't an amazing performance by us. It was, lots of room for improvement, obviously, but I think the dare sort of just clicked back into us. And even though we lost, we took it into the game against Hawthorn. We got a convincing 70-point win, and then we took it into the SCG, a place where no WA side has won since 2011, and we went and pinched a win against a nevertheless weak Swans, but it doesn't matter. It's still a very, very tough place to win, and we went and beat them over at the SCG. We then came back, an injury depleted Geelong side. Still, as I said, they've got all their key players, or not all of them, but they've got quite a few key players in. That's still a very good win to be beating the reigning premiers by 5 goals. And then we've gone and beaten Melbourne at the MCG by 7 points. I'm just really, really impressed with the way we have just changed our entire mindset. I think the game plan hasn't changed a whole lot. I think it's been the mindset in the players to use the dare, use a bit more handball game, kick some, make the gutsy kick down the middle that will open space in the 50. Jai Amos is the true full forward that we've been looking for since 2017. I'm just so happy with the way our future's building up and the way our now's building up, and we could be a real threat in finals this year, I feel, because 4 straight wins, that's only going to keep building and knock on the door of an upper top 8 finish. Coming in at 5th, I have got Melbourne. I think Melbourne are not to be worried about at all. A bit like Geelong last year. I think they, at this time of the year, they weren't playing necessarily their best football, but you could always just tell they were going to hit their straps towards the end of the year when it really mattered, and I have a feeling Melbourne are going to do the exact same, and they've mistimed it the past 2 years. They've gone 9-0 and 10-0 to start the season, and they've sort of faded out. Obviously 2021 they didn't, but last year they faded out after going 10-0, and Melbourne need to make sure to do that again. They need to go the Geelong strategy, and while it is very risky, clean up the perfections along the way, bank these 4 points. And because they didn't play well against Carlton, they didn't play well in the win against Gold Coast, they didn't play well in the loss against Port Adelaide, but they'll build, and by about just after the buys, they'll hit their straps. They'll go on a massive winning streak, and that's how teams win premiership. So I think that's what Melbourne are trying to do. Not to be worried about for them, but they're in 5th. In 4th, honestly, I'm so surprised about this. It's the Western Bulldogs. What a season they have had. I don't think a lot of people could have seen this coming, to be honest. The Western Bulldogs sitting 6th on the table. They had a loss to Gold Coast last week up in the North End, but just convincing win after convincing win, to be honest, for the Bulldogs. They just look so calm in the way they play. Luke Beveridge back into instilling that method of just, very, very calm ball movement, but that midfield is dominating, even with the absence of Adam Treloar. He's rotating the mixture of a Bailey Smith or a Jack McCrane's that midfield. He's mixing up all the CBAs, who goes to the middle. Beveridge is a very, very hard coach to predict, and that's a part of the Bulldogs' charm. And I do think the Western Bulldogs very well could finish top 4 this year. But with teams like Collingwood, Port, Melbourne, Brisbane, it will be hard to crack in, but they're a definite shot. They're definite outside smoky chance, but they'll definitely be playing finals, because I love the way they play for their footy. And they're in some good form at the moment. Apart from that loss last week, they won their 5 before that. So yeah, no concerns for the Dogs. A very overexceeded year. In 3rd in the power rankings, I have got the Brisbane Lions. Brisbane came off a loss last week to the Adelaide Crows, which was disappointing. They played at the Adelaide Oval twice now this year, and they've lost both times in really, really poor manner. That was obviously a little more respectable than that 10-goal grubbing from Port Adelaide in round 1, but they've just been winning by 8-9 goals every week lately, Brisbane. No matter who the opponent is, home or away, apart from that game last week, they've just been really, really convincing. They beat Gold Coast, they beat Essendon, they beat Carlton, they beat Fremantle, all by very, very convincing margins, and they just get the job done. I think Jack Gunston has been an underrated part this year. He hasn't fully hit his straps, but the way he leads as a high half forward and delivers it into the 50 is a really, really important way of how Brisbane play. And that stoppage, it's just unfair. He can just go and get a father son as good as Will Ashcroft from the draft. But just, he's 18, 19, and he adds an immediate impact of domination to that center clearance. Him, Neil, Dunkley, unbelievable. Brisbane are a force to be reckoned with this year, and they're such an interesting team to talk about in that premiership race. In 2nd, it has to be Port Adelaide, and I think we all knew Port Adelaide would bounce back this year. They started last season 0-5, and I think everyone knew they would bounce back. I think it was just a little bit of that 0-5 blunder at the start last year that messed up their entire season, because they played pretty good footy for the rest of that season. But this year, Port Adelaide have been so impressive, honestly. They've won something like 7 or 8 in a row. Really, really impressive football. The center contest of Rosie, Buggers, Boak, Wines, it's just the perfect mix of youth and veteranism, if that's a word. Ken Hinkley, can he win a flag? It's been so long at this club without a premiership, but he just keeps having these years, which you can't allow the club to sack you after having these years, and he's just got to translate it into a premiership in one of these years. And unfortunately, we'll move into the number 1 seed, because I can't see, it's unfortunate for people like him, because I can't see anyone but Collingwood winning the flag. I actually can't. Someone's probably going to win it. Someone else is probably going to win it at the end of the season. But in my eyes right now, I can't see a world in which Collingwood don't win the premiership this year. They are so miles ahead of everyone. Port Adelaide and Brisbane and Melbourne and the Bulldogs, they're all very good teams. But Collingwood are at such a different level after less than 2 years of coaching under Craig McRae. All the big games that they've played in, all these random recruits such as, John Noble and Jack Gingerman, they've all just got these players out of thin air. Mason Cox, who they've been developing for some time. And they've just instilled these players into... Look, they don't have a team full of superstars. Like, Darcy Cameron in the ruck, he's not a superstar, but he just does his job so well. The only legitimate superstars in that team is probably, Sidebottom, Pendlebury, Darcy Moore. To find another one, to be honest. Nick Dacos, too. And maybe, DeGoey and the other, Josh Dacos. It's not a team full of superstars. It's just a team of players that know how to play their role. They just smack it down the middle, smack it down the wings, and they wing the ball at ground level. They get it into the 50, and their forwards do the job. They all help each other. They all stand side by side. They're such a team. They're such a unit. And they're going to win the flag this year. I don't see it any other way. Alright, well, thank you all for watching this video. You may have seen on my community tab, I've been really struggling with uploading lately. I've had exams and everything, but I'm hoping I can start some continuity soon with the uploading, because I feel like I've let you lot down. So yeah, hope you can all understand, and I'll try get the uploads pumping out as much as possible in the nearby future. But yeah, it is very, very tough at the moment. Yeah, thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.